You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the KTPF Reload show. In case you're wondering what the Reload show is about, if you haven't heard previous shows, these are the interviews that were conducted by good friends of mine, Steve and Sue Taggart, in the days of the KTPF radio show. Their own radio show ran for just over 4 years, broadcasting every week for over 3 hours. I joined them in the last 18 months of the show's run, but eventually the guys felt they'd just about had enough. It was a monumental effort to keep broadcasting every week for 3 hours. It was a wonderful show. But unfortunately they're no longer involved, and the shows have just sort of sat in the archives, so I thought it would be nice to bring them back to life and bring you the interviews that the guys conducted over those 4 years. They include some of the most interesting people within the world of the paranormal and some not so well known but still, nevertheless still very interesting. We even have 1 or 2 rather unusual shows, including a live seance and other things along those lines. Anyway, hopefully you enjoy tonight's show, and this is the KTPF Reload show. Enjoy.
This program deals with themes of an adult nature and is intended for a mature audience. They've landed.
You're in the right place. Online, on the web, and on air. All over the world.
Talk radio.
You hear us, we hear you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the KTPF Community Talk Show. My name is Suzanne.
And I'm Steve.
And I'm Andy.
And we're keeping the paranormal friendly, so pull up a chair and relax with us while we bring you a show full of the supernatural, the paranormal and other strange phenomena. Well, anyway, let me just let you know what's coming up tonight. The Mammoth Mountain Poltergeist. We're going to be talking to Jenny Ashford and Tom Ross. Just to put you in the picture, in December 1982, Tom Ross was 13 years of age and he took a week's vacation to the Mammoth Lakes in California with his aunt, uncle and cousin. Almost from the moment they arrived at their condo, they experienced a near constant barrage of bizarre phenomena that escalated over their stay and seemed to follow them after they left. The family was simultaneously terrified and amazed. Jenny Ashford interviewed and constructed a storyline of events from their eyewitness accounts for the book. Jenny is a horror writer and graphic designer, and Tom, a retired Army veteran who spends his time researching paranormal phenomena. They both live together in Orlando, and they will be telling us about their book, and Tom will be talking about their experiences, which will be quite interesting because it definitely gave us food for thought, didn't it, Steve? Steve?
It did indeed. So I was listening, but I was sorting out my pages here, so I'm all ready to go.
We're going to find out more about that later, and I think you'll be quite surprised, actually, about what the phenomena was and how it went on. Well, now, thank you for that, Steve. It's now
You're
time
welcome.
to get our guest on the show, so please bear with us. Now, as I said to you, Jenny Ashford has interviewed and constructed a storyline of events from their eyewitness accounts with Tom Ross, who is now on the show. Good evening, both of you.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Okay.
Can you hear us?
Yep, we can hear you fine. Hopefully everyone can hear you in the chat room. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you on the show. Thank you for contacting us to come on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, sometimes, guys, we hear from authors of true ghost stories, but tonight we also have the experiencer of the phenomena. Jenny, as I said, is a writer. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, Jenny?
Sure. I'm normally a horror writer, and this is my first nonfiction book that I wrote, and I wrote it in cahoots with Tom here.
Yeah, I told her the story, and she
I wanted to write a book about it. But yeah, normally I write fiction, but yeah, this is my first nonfiction. I'm also a graphic designer, but that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started having a relationship with Tom, obviously, and you found out about the story. Now, obviously, Tom wasn't very upfront, forthcoming at first, was he? He needed to get your trust and everything. But what made you interested in writing this sort of book, going out of your normal genre?
I think it was mostly because, I'm really skeptical about this kind of thing normally. And so when he told me the story, at first I was kind of like, what? Really? No. You know what I mean? I thought he was like pulling my leg kind of. But the more he told me about it, and then he said, well, contact my aunt and uncle because it happened to them too, and they'll tell you the same thing. So I called them, and they told me the same story. And I'm like, God, that's really a great story. I'm like, that it's really scary, and it's like I was freaked out, and I believed them. So I was like, do you mind if I write a book about it? I know it's not what I usually write, but it's kind of similar to what I usually write. It's just nonfiction.
Right. It's just that it's a paranormal book, and I wanted my case to be recorded.
Yeah.
Along with other legitimate poltergeist cases. And so it's not a totally novelized form of the story. She did make sure that it's not a dry read, and you can read through it quickly. I think it's probably about a 2-hour read.
Yeah.
And but nothing was added and nothing was taken away.
No.
And I walked the reader through it. What a poltergeist outbreak is like. And I included what people thought at the time when certain things would happen. And if there were any discrepancies in our memories, I included both versions.
Yeah,
because some
we didn't want to exaggerate anything or change anything from what they remembered.
Right. Because it's been a long time, and sometimes people's memories can kind of start diverging. Where one person said, "No, I remember this happening," and another person goes, "No, that happened, but it didn't happen the way you're describing it." So there were a few, discrepancies in the way we remembered things, but that's just normal.
And that was pretty minor, though.
Minor.
Really, the only things that were just like little things like, oh, I thought the lamp looked like this, and you stuff like that. It was nothing really
big.
Significant.
No.
Okay, guys. Well, Tom, can you tell us how it all started? Obviously, you were 13. You were going on vacation with your auntie and uncle. Just start to tell us a bit about how things were, how your life was before then, and whether you had any anxieties or anything like that.
Okay. Starting the story off is always difficult for me because it tends to be boring to tell the story because it starts off so slowly.
Yeah.
And that the average person wouldn't understand had they not read the whole book and see how the whole thing unfolded. At this point in my life, I was 13. My parents had just divorced. I was in a military academy, which that's a lot of people kind of think that's strange, but this was the Cold War period in the United States.
Yeah,
and
1982.
1982.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys wanted to go to military academy, and it's kind of like cross between school and the Boy Scouts. So I loved military academy. I was a day student. I didn't live there, but I was in military school. And my mother was working for an oil refinery. And the company that she worked for was leasing a condominium in the Mammoth Mountain ski resort area. And normally executives would get offered to stay there. But it was Christmas time and none of the executives wanted to go, and so they offered it to my mom. And my mother declined it. I don't remember what it was she had to do. She was doing something at that time. So she offered it to her sister. And I asked if I could go, and they said, sure. So I ended up going to Mammoth Mountain Ski Resort with my aunt, my uncle, and my cousin. And that's how it began, that situation. On the way there, I started to feel kind of a growing anxiety because the drive to Mammoth Mountain looks a lot like the opening scene from The Shining. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Yeah.
You know when you're in that opening scene, they're going through the mountains and it's snowy, and it felt like that. And I had seen that movie, and I started to get what we call in the United States weirded out. I was creeping out. And as we approached, I started to have a feeling of kind of dread, like maybe there was going to be something bad there, kind of like something out of the movies. And just a few miles from arriving, the hood flew open on the Jeep.
Yeah.
And we weren't going fast. And we were on a cliff face, basically. You know, I think it was on the right side of the road, just it was almost a sheer drop. We were in the mountains, so it was dangerous in the snow. So my uncle, of course, he stopped the car. We weren't going fast anyway, maybe only 45 miles per hour. And he stopped the car, got out. I watched him walk around to the front of the car, inspect the hood, and shut it. And he came back in with a perplexed look on his face, and my aunt said, "What was it?" And he goes, "I don't know. I couldn't find anything wrong with it." He was continuing driving. They continued driving, and he was saying, I don't see how it could happen again because it has the safety latch. Well, it affected me. I got scared.
Yeah.
And they got over it quickly, and we finally arrived to the ski resort or the condominium in the ski resort. And as soon as I showed up, as soon as we walked in the front door, I didn't like it. And they didn't like it either. It had an eerie feeling.
Mm.
And I put my bag, my carry-on bag, or I guess you call it a little carry bag, handbag, on the bed of the room that I had selected to stay in, and walked back out to the car to get my suitcase. And as I returned and went back in through the doorway of that room, I caught some motion out of the corner of my eye, and I looked, and I saw a rolled up pair of socks. They just come to a screeching halt. You could almost see them blurring. And the carry-on bag that I had was open and on its side and with clothes scattered around in every direction by about 3 feet. And I was stunned. I said, "No, that can't be. That must have fallen over." So I just shook it off, and we continued with the rest of the day. There was nothing about the place that, when you looked at it, there was nothing about the place that was innately spooky. It just had a very heavy aura to it. You had a feeling of being watched. Now, not much happened that first day, but that night, when I went to go bed down, I went into that bedroom by myself and laid down to go to sleep.
Mm.
Now there was a closet in that room, and I heard those metal coat hangers jingling against each other in there, and I was just thinking, "Oh no, man, there's a monster in the closet." I said, "No, it can't be. That's just the wind."
In the closet.
In the closet somehow, but it did it gently a few times, and I tried to ignore it. And just about as I was starting to get sleepy, I heard something on the carpet. Sounded like something being drug across that heavy shag carpeting that you'd find in the early 80s. It was kind of left over from the 70s, you know?
Yeah.
And it sounded like something fairly big, like a small piece of furniture. And it sounded like it moved by about 3 or 4 feet, and it stopped. And then off to my right on the nightstand, there was a telephone. And I heard that receiver lift up off that telephone by maybe an inch and then set itself back down on the receiver. I heard, you know how those old analog telephones had the dials? You had those 2 plastic pegs underneath there that the receiver, the buttons. I heard those buttons rattle.
Yeah. Now, I believe you tried hard to dismiss certain events that happened on your arrival and on that first night. You was trying to, you know, make it sound as though it was just nothing, wasn't you? You wasn't thinking anything, you know, untoward really. You was trying to make some excuse for these happenings.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in denial.
Yeah.
I heard that receiver pick up and drop itself back down onto the telephone. And I immediately went, no, that didn't happen. I turned and looked.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anything there. Even though the room was dark, I didn't see any figures or anything like that. And I know that telephone receiver moved. Mm-hmm. I heard it.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to admit that to myself.
I mean, the first few things that happened, you could have, I mean, they were creepy, but you could kind of write them off as kind of like, oh, you know, maybe I imagined it, or maybe it was a draft, or maybe, like you said, with the bag, maybe the bag just fell over, or, you know, you still had plausible deniability until probably the next day when, like, the really scary stuff started happening.
Right. It wasn't until the next day
that
we really confronted with it. And when it demonstrated what it could do in front of all of us as a group, there was no denying it. And as soon as there's no denying it and you recognize its existence, it gets stronger. And it gets stronger quickly.
Can you tell us
I don't know, I guess I could just...
Sorry, can you tell us about the bunk bed incident? Now, we're talking big, heavy bunk beds, aren't we?
Well, that happened later on. I think probably the next thing, probably the next important thing to talk about would be the lamp.
Oh, yes.
That was the first thing that was just undeniable.
That everyone saw.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We all went to the ski slopes. My uncle and I didn't know how to ski and weren't having that much fun, and he just wanted to drive around, and I rode with him. As we were driving around, I started asking him questions about haunted houses. And he looked at me, he's like, why are you asking me this? And I said, I don't know. You think that house is haunted? And he's like, maybe, I don't know. You know, my band once practiced in a house we thought might have been haunted, but I think it was just rats. He goes, let's go back and look and see if there's anything there. When we went back into the condo, we noticed that hand towels had been laid out for us, and all the beds had been made. And the hand towels were in strange places, you know, at the foot of the bed, and one of them was wrapped behind the back of a doorknob.
Back of a chair.
Back of a chair. And
like not a normal place.
Right, and they were folded up in thirds, and then folded over the back of a chair or on the edge of a bed. And in one of the last rooms on the bottom first floor was a big heavy bunk bed in the room, and it had a drafting table with a chair, like a drafting chair that you sat in that had a back on it. And on the back of that chair was a folded up hand towel. And my uncle's pointing at it, and we're looking at it, and we're like, what does this mean? If this is room service, why are they putting folded hand towels in these places?
Yeah.
Well, I saw my uncle grab the back of that chair and push it into the drafting table. He says, let's get out of here. Let's go get Lois. So we pick up Lois and my cousin. And on the way back to the condo, I spill the beans. I tell Lois, I'm like, Lois, we think the house is haunted. And my uncle wasn't too happy about that because he wanted me to keep my mouth shut about it. And we told her everything that we saw and told her about the hand towels. We come back into the house. We take her directly to that drafting table to show her that hand towel that was on the back of the drafting table.
Yeah.
And the chair was pulled out. The chair was pulled out about 2 or 3 feet. And I said to my uncle, I said, Red, my uncle's name is Red. I said, Red, I remembered you pushing that table in. And look, that chair into that table. And look at that chair. It's out by about a good 2 feet. And he said, yeah, I did push that in. And my aunt, her response was, boy, that's weird. And this place is kind of weird. It's got a kind of a creepy feeling to it. And she goes, and look at that lamp. And there was this lamp. We kind of disagree on what the lamp looked like.
Yeah.
But there was this lamp that was on an end table. And strangely enough, it was at the foot of the bunk bed up against the wall. And she commented how ugly that lamp was. And we were all just standing in the doorway, and my uncle shut the door. I don't even think we really went in there. But he shut the door, and we walked down the hallway by about 5 paces. And my uncle stopped dead in his tracks, and he said, wait a minute, hold on. Let's go back and memorize it in case something moves. So we got back to the door, another 5 steps, opened the door, and the lamp was gone. I screamed. I screamed and ran straight to the front door of the place. And I can remember as I was watching that door, that front door to that house get closer and closer to me. In my mind, I was going to try to open that door, and it wasn't going to open. You know, like something out of a horror movie, you know. But it did. It opened. And then I went back, and I find them standing there looking at the lamp, and the lamp is in the closet with the electrical cord still kind of strewn across the floor, pointing into the direction of where the electrical socket was.
Yeah.
Where them plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was nobody in there. We all knew that no one was in there to move that.
Well, you didn't hear anything. It was only a couple of seconds.
A couple of seconds, and we didn't hear anything. And it was the kind of situation where had a full-grown person, maybe even a 13-year-old kid, had they walked across that floor, you would have heard it.
Yeah.
You know. So I know there was nobody in there. And the house kind of went into a panic.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really how it began. And my uncle went into total denial. He was, no, this place has got to be rigged with wires. There's got to be trap doors in this house. Somebody's in here, and they're coming out and moving things and then going back into trap doors. We were pulling up on the carpet to try to see if there was hidden doors in through the floor, you know, like inside the closets. We were checking. And the windows were sealed on the inside with plastic. Because in the winter here, we seal them with plastic sometimes, especially back in those days. What do they call it? Plasticated windows. So you couldn't jump in and out of a window. And then later, the outbreak spread to the upper floor. And then it just became just house-wide, you know. It was bizarre. And the things that it could do were violated normal laws of physics. It was, I know you've had some guests on, 2 of them I really respect. One of them is Guy Playfair.
Yeah.
I found Guy Playfair's book when I was about 16, and that really helped me deal with this. Because in those days, pre-internet, in the United States, there was no such thing as a poltergeist. I had never really heard that word.
No.
But I recognized it, you know. What happened in the Enfield case was pretty much what happened to me. It just didn't last as long.
So, Jenny, when I believe you did some research for the on other poltergeist cases before you wrote the book, did you find similarities then?
Yeah, I think the most similar one was probably Enfield, and that's why I wrote the most about it in the book. Tom's case was a lot more interactive. Any of the other ones I really read about. I mean, in your case, you kind of had a thing going where you and Red could almost like tell it to do something.
Yeah, I could tell it to do something, it would do it.
Which that doesn't really happen because it seems Enfield seemed a lot more random, I guess.
Well, Morris Gross told the Enfield poltergeist,
That's true.
And it responded to him.
So in that way,
but Janet didn't seem. I didn't seem to interact with it much. I did.
Other than that, I think that was probably the most similar case. I kind of discussed that when I discussed the Don Decker, the Rain
Right.
Man, which wasn't really that similar, but
Yeah, poltergeist can take a lot of different forms.
yeah.
We've got a question in the chat room for you, Tom. Mossy would like to know, do you think that the trauma of your parents splitting up along with him going through adolescence might have been what brought on the whole experience?
Yeah, but it didn't bring on the whole experience. I think that's just a couple of factors because a lot of people go through that.
Yeah.
And poltergeist happens.
Okay.
So I think it has a lot to do with group synergy. It may have to do with the another contributing factor may be the belief system of the poltergeist focus or the poltergeist agent. It seems to be that the poltergeist agent has to be either slightly above average intelligence or slightly below average intelligence, but no one average, no one really intelligent, and no one really dumb.
Now, I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. Whilst reading the book, I actually thought it was Wes that was doing this due to these death-like sleeping. Did you ever come to this conclusion?
Well, I think there's a group synergy that kind of helps it.
Yeah.
You know, in the Enfield case, it was not only Janet, but Janet's sister also seemed to be contributing to it. So, I really think that you're dealing with some kind of an emergent property involving some kind of quantum fields.
Yeah.
Having to do with consciousness.
Okay.
And I go on later in my book to talk about things that develop later on after the poltergeist phase.
Yeah.
Having to do with OBE, which is out-of-body experience. And I started to have spontaneous OBEs. Now, Janet had some too, but it's not expressly stated in those books, but that's the way I interpreted, some of the things that she said. And I think that poltergeist may be a modified form of an out-of-body experience.
Okay.
The out-of-body experience you had, which was probably 5 or 6 years after the poltergeist thing, right?
No, longer.
Oh, it was longer.
That would have been 1994.
Oh, so that, yeah. Okay, yeah. So that
was a lot longer,
yeah.
maybe almost 10 years.
Yeah. But when you had the spontaneous out-of-body experience, you also had some kind of quote-unquote phenomena with because the fridge was vibrating.
Right. And I had a witness to that. So that was something that really happened. Some OBEs can have poltergeist-like side effects.
Okay.
But it was an exciting experience in a way, frightening.
Okay. Tom, Steve's got a question for you here.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, is this Steve who?
My husband. My husband.
Oh, okay. Because I know another Steve from the UK. Steve Mera.
No, it's not Steve Mera.
Yeah, Steve Mera's not with us tonight.
He's not with us tonight.
Okay. In your OBE, you say that objects around you seem to be energy instead of solid, a bit like the Matrix, and that would suggest that everything is energy. Hence, we can interact, i.e., make things move by thought, and thought is energy, and solid is just a perception. Could that explain a lot of the paranormal that's been reported?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that consciousness at a certain level, probably like at a quantum level, and I don't want to talk too much about quantum physics, of course, because no one understands quantum physics, and I'm not a scientist. I've been listening to what scientists are saying in this field. A good one would be Stuart Hameroff about how consciousness itself may be a thing, and that it may be able to interact at a very microscopic level with what we would consider to be matter. But what we're considering may not be matter. It's just matter from our point of view. But I'm going to start going off like Deepak Chopra, and I'm not that kind of philosopher. I can only report to you what I saw and what I experienced.
Yeah. So how do you think that the bunk beds. There was a story about the bunk beds and the blue haze. If you could tell us about that. Why do you think the blue haze happened? That sounded a bit similar to your OBE.
Yeah, I guess it does. Yeah, it was just a blue haze that looked like, man, it looked kind of like cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
But more even, like a field.
Right, more even, like a field. It seemed luminescent, but it didn't glow in the dark, and it didn't cast light. It didn't cast shadows. It looked a lot like, if you look at the sun for a bit and then look away, you'll see like a sunspot in your eye.
Yeah. Can you just tell the listeners that incident, how that happened?
Well, which incident in particular? There were thousands.
The original blue haze, when you turned the lights off and everything.
Well, the first time we saw the blue haze, we weren't actually in the house. We were in the car. We shut all the lights off and closed the shades to the upstairs living room. Went downstairs and got into the car to go and get something to eat. And my uncle, I heard him say, "Look," and I saw his hand point up. And I leaned down to look up through the windshield to look at what he was looking at, and the window of the living room, the shades had been opened. And I know that we closed them, and the lights were on. Mm. So we sat there in the parking lot, or the little driveway in front of the condominium, just staring at it, going, wow. Yeah, and it turned the light on, and it opened the shades. And we could see, my aunt said, "Do you see that blue?" And then I started to see it. I said, "Yeah, I see it." And it looked like a blue haze up on the ceiling, covering the entire ceiling as far as you could see through the window. And it appeared to be maybe about 2 feet thick. Now, if you tried to focus directly on it, you had a problem seeing it. You kind of had to relax your eyes and kind of look a little bit to the right or the left, a little bit out of your peripheral vision, you know. If you tried to focus directly at it, it would make a clear spot in it. It was something you had to see to really understand. And I don't know what it was other than that. It was just some kind of a weird field. And it would sometimes become an orb, probably about the size of anywhere between the size of a tennis ball and a beach ball. And it would be up in a corner of a room. And we could all agree that it was there. And sometimes it felt like it was watching you from there.
Yeah.
You felt watched in the house.
Right. I want to go back to your out-of-body experience now, and wondered whether you can just explain what happened there so that people can get the two together, if you understand what I mean. To see whether they come up with the same situation.
Well, the out-of-body experience happened a long time after this when I was in the Army. Yeah. And I was getting ready to leave the Army because my tour was up. And I was in my barracks, and in the U.S. Army, barracks aren't what you'd see on television. You know, they look like apartments. And I had one roommate, and we had our own bathroom, and there were like 3 little rooms, all joined by a common room. And it was filled with wall lockers and desks. Each guy had his own 2 wall lockers, his own desk, and you had your own televisions. It was before cell phones, though. And so we all had a common phone, and that's beside the point. My roommate was awake. It must have been about, I don't know, midnight. I don't think it was on a weekend because we didn't have to work the next day. And I laid down to go to sleep. And as I laid down, I started to feel real heavy. And I started to feel kind of a vibration starting in my feet. And it slowly worked its way up to my head. And it felt like my head was shaking back and forth. And the rhythm at which that shaking back and forth, it got stronger, and it seemed like it got faster. And instead of stopping it, I just kind of relaxed and just let it go. Mm. And as that was happening, my roommate said, "What's that noise?" And I kind of cracked my eyes open a little bit, and I could hear the microwave and the refrigerator in the room. Well, the first thing that happened is the microwave started to pop. It made a popping sound that sounded like a spark. And it did that. And then he got up and looked at it. And he unplugged it. He unplugged the microwave. Then he went back into his side of the little room. Quickly, it overtook me again, that kind of pulsating feeling. And it got so strong that the microwave and the little mini refrigerator that it was sitting on started to vibrate at that same frequency that I could feel in my head. And as soon as I realized that was happening, I just accepted it. I was just like, that's okay. I don't care. And instantly, I was looking down on the room from the center of the, from a center location of a ceiling. And I felt like I was about as big as a ping pong ball. And I could see in every direction at once. And I could see everything in the room. And it looked like, kind of like that blue haze like you're talking about, but it was a lot brighter.
Yeah.
And the colors didn't make sense. Just it was whatever color it had to be to make an object distinct from another object. And time seemed to not be flowing the same way. You could get a lot done very quickly, you know. It's like your speed of thought increased. And it just, man, it was weird. I mean, I saw my roommate stand up, and I'm looking down on him. I saw him stand up off of his bed, or, you know, get up off his bed and run across the room to the microwave. And then I could see him fiddling with it. Even though I really couldn't see him as he was, I just saw him as kind of a two-dimensional black shape. And then I saw him go over to where I was laying, where my body was in my bed, and I was going, oh man, he's going to snap me out of it. And a lot happened during that time, but I can go back to that because I was thinking things and looking at things also at the same time. But he shakes my body in bed, and I get kind of implode. I'm up in the ceiling, and I implode and explode into my head down in the body on the bed, and then when I come to, I'm in a state of sleep paralysis. I can't move. He's shaking me, saying, "I thought you were dead," that kind of stuff. And I was so exhausted, I just passed out. And I woke up the next morning. He was still awake, and he confronted me about it. He wasn't too happy with what happened. He was from a very Southern Baptist background here in the United States. So anything unexplained is equated to Satanism with them. Well, but what had happened while I was out, while all this was happening, I realized that I could look through objects, look into them, and I could also see objects from two different viewpoints at the same time, which is very disturbing when it happens. But that's basically it.
Right. Okay. Just going back to Mammoth Lake. Did you have a word with anyone about the people that work there about any possible experiences or weird stuff going on?
Well, I didn't, but my aunt did.
Yeah.
And Jenny can tell you about that part because that was the part she investigated.
Okay.
That part of it.
Yeah, basically, they didn't really want to make a big deal about it. They didn't really want to tell anybody because they thought people would think they were nuts.
Let me step in here for a second.
Okay.
Just the listener of today has to remember that this was the early 80s.
Yeah.
And in the United States, there was no concept of poltergeist in the mass.
Not really.
Not in the mass media. All right. Nobody had ever heard of this.
No.
The only thing we knew about were ghosts. We knew about ghosts. We knew about demons. But only crazy people believed in those. So what are you going to do? You're going to go call the police? Hey, objects are moving in the house. Hey, there's a ghost in here. The police are not going to respond. who's going to respond is somebody from the psychiatric ward. And there was no internet, and we weren't from Mammoth Mountain. We were just visiting there. So we didn't have any friends or family within that, none of the neighbors. We didn't even know who they were.
Yeah.
So, and we were getting snowed in. We were trapped in there. We couldn't leave because the roads were closing. Yeah, because the snowstorm had hit. So we were very isolated. And my aunt and my uncle, the last thing that they wanted was to start asking too many crazy questions and then start coming under scrutiny, as being crazy.
Yeah. I think basically I think Lois she called the office.
Right.
And just kind of casually was like, oh, has anyone said anything weird going on? And she didn't say, stuff's moving or anything. She said, oh, has anyone reported anything?
Mm.
And I think the woman was just like, oh, no, nothing like that.
Yeah.
Very.
Right. That was a taboo subject in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Now, Jenny, how did you feel about writing this book when normally all your monsters and ghosts are from imagination, as you say, safely confined within the books of the pages of your books, and being an atheist too? How did you feel?
Yeah. I actually, strangely enough, I really enjoyed writing this book. It seemed very easy and very quick. Because as much of a skeptic as I am, I've always really kind of liked sort of true ghost stories, and even though I think a lot of them I'm always kind of like, man, I wish that was true. I wish I could see it. And I never have.
Mm.
And so in some ways, I'm almost kind of like living vicariously through him because I never got to see it and I always wanted to.
Mm.
But
she's very scientific.
Yeah.
If you can't measure it, she doesn't believe it. So she would say things like that would kind of make me mad. Because not everything is known. What I saw, I believe one day will be explained by science.
Yeah.
But now it's in the realms of paranormal.
Right. Now, I want to bring in the bunk beds here because we've talked about face cloths and little things and stuff like that, and lamps. Stuff that's easy to move. But we're talking big bunk beds, aren't we?
Yeah. Okay, the bunk bed moved several times.
Yeah.
I think the first time it moved was the lamp disappeared. I think Lois and Red remembered that the bunk bed moved 3 feet away from the wall,
Right.
in addition to the lamp being moved into the wall.
Yeah, I remember that now, that bunk bed had moved on that particular occasion, about 3 feet. But looking back on it, when that bunk bed first moved, I went in denial.
Yeah.
I went into denial. I didn't want to accept that had moved.
Because that bed weighed what, like?
Probably 300 pounds. It was a bunk bed made out of 4 logs.
Yeah,
that had
like
cut down tree trunks. And I think my Uncle Red and I could probably barely move it, but it would make a lot of noise. And it had moved silently in a very short period of time. I don't remember on that first one. I don't remember that clearly how much time it had.
Well, and also there was also another incident.
It was the second one.
Yeah.
The second incident of the bunk bed impressed me. That's when my uncle came upstairs, and I was up on the couch. And he'd come from downstairs, and he said, "The bunk bed is up against that door. I can't get the door open." And I went, "No way." And he goes, "Come look." So I followed him downstairs to that last room, and you could open the door, maybe about 6 inches, and it would hit that bunk bed. And that was the only way in or out of that room, beside that ground floor window, and it was plasticated. We could not get into the room for probably a half hour, maybe longer.
Yeah.
And I know my uncle could not have moved that bed on his own and then slipped through that 6-inch gap, because my uncle probably weighed 250 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a small guy. He probably weighed 250 pounds. He couldn't have fit through that little gap. And when the bunk bed moved, though, it didn't move before our eyes. It moved when our backs were turned. there was other stuff that we actually saw with our eyes moving, although it was rare. And it was very disturbing to see something, actually physically see something move. And I got several of those stories. But then we also noticed that, oh man.
I must admit, I was there with you when I was reading the book, and I thought, oh my God, I was really on the edge of my seat.
Yeah. The first thing that I actually saw with my eyes move that was impressive, besides that little rolled up ball of socks.
Yeah.
Okay, on the very first day, I was standing in the hallway. I always feel like it's important that I have to give the background of where I was, even though it probably doesn't matter where I was.
Well, you're setting the scene.
No, go on, set the scene.
I had just come out of the bathroom.
Yeah.
Because there were some handprints on the ceiling that we didn't know where they came from, and it looked like somebody had wiped their dirty hands on the curtains inside the bathroom.
Yeah.
And I was going like, did somebody here do that, or we called it the bloast, you know? That was our code word for ghost. Or did the bloast do that? And I was looking at it, and I turned around and looked down the hallway and saw my uncle walking towards me in the hallway, and he was passing one of the master bedroom doorway. And as he was passing that doorway, he looked to his right and just went, man, he gasped so loud when I tried to recreate it, I coughed.
Yeah.
He gasped so loudly, and I saw his eyes get to be about the size of tea saucers. And I saw his body just lock up. It looked, all my hair stood up. You know how when somebody's hair stands up, you see somebody's hair stands up, and your hair stands up? Oh man, I knew he was looking at something bad. And being 13, I ran straight for it. I ran right up next to him to look and see what it was he was looking at. And he was looking at the rocking chair. And the rocking chair was in the corner of the room. It had a stack of folded up towels on it, sitting on the seat part of it. Mm. And it was rocking back and forth. It was rocking back and forth about as fast as a man could possibly rock something back and forth. Like if you'd grabbed the headrest to that chair and just shook it back and forth with all your might as fast as you could, that's how fast that chair was moving. And those towels didn't fall out of it. And up on the top, I saw it, I just went into shock, you know. And up on the top where the backrest was, I could see a slight haze, like a white cloud. That's the only way I can describe it. Mm. And as soon as I looked at it, it looked like it jumped up and ran away into the corner of the room. But the thing is, it looked like it moved 100 feet, even though that was only 3 feet deep. Like it went off into another dimension or something. It kept moving, or it got smaller. I don't know. But it happened so fast that I couldn't accept what it was I was seeing. As soon as I was able to take it all in, it's like the shaking stopped and then it came to a slow rest. And as soon as I saw it slowing down, I panicked and ran again. I ran from it. Ran downstairs, but I came right back up. I was a ball of energy back then. I couldn't sit still. I was very... And when I ran back there, Red was just standing in the room, just still looking at it, dumbstruck.
Yeah.
That was one thing that was one of the things that I saw with my eyes. The other thing is curtains flying open real fast. It put things in my pocket. That was another one, but I didn't really see that. My back was turned off. That was a good one.
Oh yeah. I remember that bit.
Yeah.
So
that was a good one.
Andy?
Just say, did Red see it start moving, or was it already moving when he looked?
The towel?
No, the chair.
The chair.
rocking chair.
It was already moving when he...
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was already moving.
It's very rare for... I don't think anyone saw anything start moving. It's like you either saw it when it was in motion...
Or arriving.
Or arriving at its final...
Yeah.
Yeah, and And I never saw an object leave. I only saw an object arrive.
Yeah, I remember you saying about you wanted it to write something down, and you was closing the door trying to catch something, wasn't you? And something happened.
Yeah. We had read. I left a piece of paper with a pen on it on a nightstand up in the top master bedroom, and my uncle and I were standing in the doorway, looking at it, and I was shutting the door. This was in the time where we were trying to catch it in the act, and as I was shutting that door, my uncle was standing behind me, looking through that same crack, and we're looking at that pen. And I guess when the door got to be about open maybe 3 inches and closing, I didn't see the pin jump up. I just saw a flash of light halfway across the room in my direction, coming at me. It seemed like it was almost as fast as a bullet. That pin came through that crack in that door. I couldn't slam the door fast enough to stop it. It was through the doorway. Almost as soon as I saw it, it hit me in the chest. The pin did. It was a Bic pin. Those clear ones,
Yeah.
And I heard it hit. And I heard, that inner tube, the little tube of ink that's inside. I heard that ink tube smack up against that plastic wall. Clack! And then the wait a minute. Oh, now, it hit my chest, bounced off my chest, hit my arm, and then it sucked its way back into the room in the final inch of motion. And I was trying to slam that door as fast as I could to stop it. So, let's make it a little more clear. Because I don't think I described it that well. I'm looking at the pin, I'm closing the door, all of a sudden the pin is already half the way towards me, flying towards me. I start shutting the door as fast as I could, but it hits me in the chest, bounces off my chest, hits my arm, and it gets sucked back into the room by the time I was able to get the door closed. That's how fast it happened. And it was moving, it looked like as fast as a bullet, and I would have thought that it would have hurt me, but it didn't. It was totally painless. And I panicked, I turned around and tried to run, but my uncle was in the way. And I said, "Did you see that? Did that happen?" He goes, "Yeah, that happened." And I went, "That didn't happen. That didn't happen." And I started mumbling, kicking rocks down the hallway, going, "No, that didn't happen. No, that didn't happen. No, that didn't happen." Yeah.
Oh,
and he was like, "No, that did happen."
You were kind of like...
Yeah, I was like that the whole time. No, that didn't happen.
Yeah,
Okay, Steve?
Tom, we've got another question from Mozzie. He says, have you experienced any poltergeist activity since you left Mammoth Lake?
Yeah, well, you see, it only started at Mammoth. We left Mammoth after about, 4 days, 5 days?
No, I think it was 5 days.
5 days, and then we went to my aunt's house. And it continued there. It got even stronger for about another 3 days.
Yeah.
It did even better stuff at my aunt's house, but I haven't got to that point yet.
Yeah. But
I haven't got to that point yet.
But after that whole incident, and then after your out-of-body experience, we haven't really had anything
No.
happen
No,
recently.
when I made certain realizations about the poltergeist at my aunt's house on the day that I left, never had poltergeist. The poltergeist fizzled almost immediately. You can stop a poltergeist if you make certain admissions to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the conscious mind won't allow this to happen. It has to be blamed on an exterior force. But that's in the book.
I wonder if
what it did sometimes. What's that?
So I wonder if just perhaps for our audience you could explain a bit more what you mean by that, because that was rather strange what you just said there. I don't follow what you're saying. I know you say it's in the book, but just a bit clearer about what you mean.
A poltergeist agent. A poltergeist agent cannot really be aware of their own influence over the poltergeist phenomenon.
Right.
The poltergeist agent starts to suspect themselves as being responsible for it, and then tries to actively do it with the conscious mind. The whole thing will fizzle. Because what I ended up doing, is I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to do it. Yeah. I'm going to move that thing over there, and then it immediately stops.
Yeah, that was what stopped the whole
Yeah.
phenomena, was that last one. Because I think before you even left and before you guys were going to your aunt and uncle's house, they kind of suspected that you were doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you suspected that you were doing it.
Not towards the last few days.
But the last few days, you kind of thought, well, because at first you thought it was reading your mind.
I thought it was reading my mind.
And then you said, maybe I'm
doing it. Right. You see, I started to get feelings about what was going to move next. All right. It started off, I would worry about something moving, and it would move. Yeah. And I would be, and I would start to suspect it's reading my mind.
Yeah.
And then I started to notice that some of the things that would move before they would move, they kind of looked different. And I would say to myself, it would look like it had a little halo around it that only I could see, evidently. And I would think to myself, that's going to move next. And as soon as I'd take my eye off, it would be gone.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, from my own sort of readings and research.
And then,
this phenomena, yeah, certainly.
Then after about a day or so, I started to think, wait a minute, it's not reading my mind. This thing is not independent of me. I'm doing this.
Right.
This must be my subconscious doing this. This is, my subconscious can do it. I can do it. Mm-hmm. And I started to do little experiments with myself. I didn't tell anybody else because it sounded crazy to me, even at that time. And so I would just say to myself, I'm going to move the kitchen table. And I'd wait for it to move, and it never would move. And that was the end of it.
Yeah.
That was it. Ended all of it.
The last thing I did, you were trying to move that bottle of cologne.
Bottle of cologne. Yeah.
Yeah. You said, I'm going to move this
from the
bathroom to the kitchen.
Yeah, I'm going to move it from the bathroom to the kitchen, and that stopped the whole Poltergeist episode.
Because it had moved.
It moved it before.
Itself.
Yes.
It moved by itself. It moved from the bathroom into the hallway.
Right. And I saw it throw that knife.
Right.
Man, that scared me. When that knife hit the ground, bam.
Yeah.
And it almost hit the sliding glass door. Yeah. I thought it was going to shatter that door.
Well, it certainly makes a lot of sense what you're saying. I think a lot of these phenomena can be person located, but it never works with actively trying to make things happen because it's a part of the brain that you're not directly controlling that is causing these events. And because it appears to happen around you and because of you, but you're not controlling it. So I entirely agree with you.
I suspect it's a safety mechanism. I think that if you were to able to do it with your conscious mind, it would be a threat to your existence. So, so the unconscious parts of your mind shut it down and stop it. Said, no, you can't do this consciously. They'll end up putting you in a laboratory and cutting your brain apart to figure out how you did that.
Very much.
Because
you agree.
Yeah, because if you could do the stuff that a poltergeist can do, you'd be a big threat.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be a big threat to the government.
Well, you'd be a threat to pretty much
You'd be a threat to
Earth.
anyone.
You could kill anyone you wanted.
Yeah, if you thought about turning somebody's head around, it could happen. But luckily, the part of the brain that controls the poltergeist is, I think, a lot like what you'd find in a split brain patient. It's not an alien organism, it's you, so it's not going to do anything outside of your own moral code, I think.
Yeah.
So are we talking telekinesis here then, Tom?
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
I don't know. I don't think you can call it telekinesis.
Well,
what do you think it is?
It would probably
appear.
Sorry? Say that again?
I'd say it's only an element of what's going on. Telekinesis is part of it because of the fact that this physical movement is occurring, but it's not the be-all and end of it, certainly.
Well, I would think that telekinesis is what? Mind over matter, that the conscious mind is moving matter, and it wasn't the conscious mind doing it. And I'm not sure that the unconscious part that does it is actually moving the matter per se. I think it might be moving quantum particles that end up moving the matter indirectly. Some of the stuff that I saw move, some of the stuff that was moving had come from other rooms in the house. And the only way they could have arrived into that room was either pass through solid walls or to teleport. And to teleport something using classical physics takes a lot of energy. There's just not enough energy to get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that means it's doing it by some kind of unconventional means. And the only unconventional means that I've ever heard of is things having to do with quantum physics. And it did seem to have something to do with whether or not you were looking at the object or not, which that somehow play that an observer effect happens in quantum physics.
Yes,
seemed
exactly.
to be that
You define the state by
to be-
observation. Sorry, go on.
Excuse me?
Okay, Tom. Early in the book, as Sue says, it seemed that the focus was on your cousin Wes with the deep sleep. But if as you think that you was the cause of the phenomenon, what would be your motivation to do this to Wes? Maybe that he was in a happy home and at the time you wasn't. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, nothing bad happened to Wesley. It's just that now Lois thought that maybe he may have been slightly altitude sick, because he did, maybe that's why he was listless. We don't know, I don't know. Maybe if the poltergeist phenomenon may have been sapping some of his energy to get some of this done. I don't know.
That's what seems like the most likely, because he really didn't seem to be
aware of it,
aware or affected by it.
Yeah.
He was scared of something, but he was scared of something. But even if you talk to him today, he will kind of go, "No way, that didn't happen. That really happened." And then he would go, "Yeah, I knew that place was bad, or I knew that place was scary, or what was that?" So he kind of wavers back and forth between accepting that it happened and not accepting that it happened. Okay. So he said that he felt presences and that he saw lights turned on that shouldn't have been turned on. But because my cousin's deaf, he doesn't know whether or not somebody walked up behind him and turned on a light.
Right.
My cousin's deaf.
Okay. Yeah, he wasn't alerted by a lot of the
Okay.
sound, things like that.
Yeah, because
he just kind of looked at everyone's facial expressions.
Yeah. He knew that everybody else was kind of wigged out, but he wasn't really sure why. And then he was slightly autistic too, so he would kind of get lost in video games. He would focus on Atari 2600 a lot.
Right.
But he was kind of an enigma through it. But if you look at the pattern, no poltergeist phenomena had happened before this nor after.
No.
It was only happened on that one occasion when he and I were together. And as soon as we all separated, it stopped. But it also stopped at the time that I started to try to do it on purpose.
Yeah.
So I've thought about it over and over again over the years, trying to decode it. And I know I was the focus. Every case has a focus. And if you have more than one kid that age in the area, that helps it.
Yeah. Okay, Steve's got another question for you.
Yeah, you've been through quite a bit in your life. Later on, you have a bike crash where you have an NDE, where you saw certain things. Is it possible that what you saw was like preconditioned and the brain's way of handling what you were going through at the time, and being told that it's not your time to come back? It is the body fighting back to bring you back to where you should be. What do you think to that?
I only included that story because it happened.
Yeah.
I got hit, got into a real bad motorcycle wreck, and was in a coma for a few weeks, and evidently I somehow passed on slightly and came back. It felt a lot like an OBE, and what I saw was pretty much the stereotypical NDE that you hear about. Surrounded by people that know you, and you kind of know them, but you can't remember. Looking back on it, you can't remember who they were. Talking to a being there that was a humanoid shape that told me that I had to go back, that it wasn't time, that there was things that I had to do, and it showed me what it was I had to do in my lifetime. but I wasn't allowed to remember it when it was over. I just remember that thing, but it's not very clear. It just looked like I was in a place. It looked like a big welding arc, just a big prismatic light. And if you ever look at a welding arc, it looked like that in 360 degrees. Everything was just pure light and energy. And the people that were around me just were a faint head and shoulders outline.
Yeah.
Although when they spoke telepathically. I could hear whatever voice they had, whether it was a male voice or a female voice. And I remember that I knew who they were and they knew me, and that, and now the main being that I talked to, I don't know if that was some kind of a alter superego or a god or an angel. I don't know. That's just what it was. Yeah. I can't give you an explanation.
Okay. Right. Now, when it comes to, just for those that are in the chat room, because I think some of them are getting a little bit confused on whether this is poltergeist activity or whether it's because you're doing it, yeah, or you found out that you were doing it. Are we saying that that's what we think poltergeist activity is?
Yeah, I'm convinced that's what it is. And one of your best investigators, the guy that helped me out the most when I was young by reading his book, was Guy Playfair.
Yeah.
And Maurice. Those are two. I lived it. I lived poltergeist. I saw it. So did my family. The closest thing I've ever been able to find to it in print so far would be Guy Playfair's book, This House is Haunted. That is an excellent, excellent book that accurately describes it.
Okay.
And I can't answer it,
Yeah.
If you grab Janet and ask Janet these questions, she's not going to be able to answer them as well.
No.
I mean, some things she'll know, some things she won't know. But one thing that Janet didn't say, I haven't really found a part where she says it was her doing it. Do you remember anything like that?
I don't think so. I don't know. I think she does kind of.
She kind of says that, yeah.
But I mean, from everything we read and all the research I did in other cases and stuff like that, I mean, we're pretty much on the same page with that, where we pretty much think a poltergeist activity is a person's subconscious.
Yeah.
Using an unknown mechanism.
Using an unknown mechanism, yeah. That's pretty much where we're at.
And now a poltergeist is going to take the form of anything that the poltergeist agent thinks it is. If the people in the house are saying, "Oh, this must be a demon," then that's what that poltergeist is going to start becoming. It's going to start becoming whatever a kid thinks a demon is. If the kid thinks it's a dead relative, it's going to start to impersonate a dead relative. Imagine kind of like a dream or a nightmare from a little kid let loose into the material world doing things. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Because yours, I mean,
mine were interactive with
it was interactive, and it would kind of follow along with whatever particular mood you were in.
Right. If I was scared, it would become more scary. If I was amused, it would become more amusing. It just did whatever I.
Yeah. But the funny thing was that it would kind of, if you were getting too scared, it would almost like pull back.
Sure, it wouldn't hurt you.
And it didn't hurt you physically.
And here's another thing. My particular poltergeist outbreak never broke anything.
Yeah, that's unusual because
never broke it, which is a sign that it knew the intrinsic monetary value of objects.
That was your military school background. I guess so. You knew you were going to get in trouble with that. On a subconscious level.
Nothing, and everything was just a demonstration.
Yeah.
Just a demonstration. Demonstration after demonstration. There's no plot to it. No overarching theme. It was spur of the moment demonstrations of what it can do. And it was impressive things that it could do. It could make a humanoid mannequin in a split second out of things that were just found in a room,
Yeah.
Under the watchful eye of my aunt.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good story.
Yeah. Now, Jenny, I like the way you segmented the book, your forward about, how you felt about it originally, the story itself, and then the bit about the research and everything. Why did you decide to do it this way?
I guess I kind of wanted, he definitely wanted the case to be documented, and I definitely wanted that part to be the main, bulk of the book that could just be like read like an enjoyable novel. But also he wanted to...
The parapsychologist.
Yeah, for a parapsychologist to read, and so it was documented. But then we also kind of wanted to... he wanted to... Since he had done so much research on his own about what he thought caused it, he's like, well, I definitely want the second half of the book to just be about that and to kind of
point people in the direction
of other research and what that might be and what you believe it might be.
Now, Jenny has 2 more books coming. You know that? It's going to be cases from a guy that you know well.
Say that again?
Tell him.
Yeah, actually, my next book is I'm working with Steve Mara on one of his cases, and we're writing a book about one of his cases from the 90s.
Right. Okay.
So that's going to be the next one. Yeah.
It's what's the Bridgeport? No, Stockport. What's it called?
Rochdale.
Rochdale. That's right. And what's the one after that?
That one is Stockport.
Stockport. Okay.
Brilliant.
You ever heard of the Rochdale Poltergeist?
I have heard about it from Steve Mara, yeah. So I can't remember it off the top of my head, but he has so many stories, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that book's almost finished.
Right.
Yeah, we've got that one's Jenny's almost done with that one, and then she's going to do Stockport after that. They're both poltergeist cases.
Right. Okay.
And we're going to tie them in with other well-documented or not well-known poltergeist cases too, because that one was a water-based phenomenon that made water, and we found 2 other ones here in the United States that are very similar to that were not explained back in the 1950s, right? In the newspaper. Yeah.
Okay, so has writing the book changed your views then, Jenny?
It has. I'm still skeptical, but
I don't know why she's skeptical.
I'm not skeptical
because she talks to everybody who's witnessed that, and she's like, wow.
Yeah.
Because I told her what happened. We lived together. I told her what happened maybe 6 times.
Yeah.
And I said, if you don't believe me, talk to my aunt. Yeah. And I put her on the phone with my aunt.
Yeah.
And I could hear her going, oh man, really? So she knows I didn't coordinate this with this story has been in my family since the day it happened.
Yeah.
Most of the people in my family know about it, even the ones that weren't there.
So I'm still an atheist. I don't really think I believe in ghosts still, but the poltergeist thing, I can believe that, because there might be, like you said, there might be some kind of quantum physics involved that we don't understand yet. I definitely think that there's a solid scientific basis for that, for what you saw.
Well, here's the thing. After that happened to me, it makes me wonder, well, if that's true, what else is true?
Right.
What, are UFOs real?
Yeah.
Are ghosts, is Bigfoot real? I don't know. I really don't think Bigfoot's real. But some of those UFO cases, like the Phoenix case, boy, that sounds pretty compelling. When you have a governor who's an ex-fighter pilot.
Well, honestly, I think UFOs and Bigfoot are probably more. Because that
wouldn't be paranormal.
That's
though,
not paranormal.
That would just be natural.
Yeah.
Aliens.
Yeah, there could be aliens
and a
coming from
hominid.
the planet. Yeah, like an ape.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's not weird.
Well, poltergeist maybe not paranormal either. It's just a part of physics we don't know about.
That's kind of what I'm leaning toward now.
Yeah, I don't think it was spirits of the dead.
No.
Mine didn't even. It didn't even
really act like a ghost.
No, mine
like
didn't.
A dead person.
I thought it was a ghost for a while.
Well, that's because that was the only framework you had to.
Right.
Yeah.
But it didn't impersonate. Mine didn't impersonate any spirits of the dead, unlike Janet's from the Enfield case.
Yeah.
But I believe Janet's poltergeist did impersonate the spirit of a dead person, and probably did it kind of accurately. But I think that was done by the subconscious mind picking up on cues in the environment.
Okay. Well, it's been great having you both on. Great reading the book. It was brilliant. I recommend it to anyone. It was really good to read. And thank you for contacting us, for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having us
Thanks for having us. Anytime you want us, just call us.
Great. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
You too.
Well, that was Tom and Jenny. And very interesting story. And yes, I will say you should read the book. It's really good. It doesn't take long to read. Does it, Steve?
No, it didn't. We read it in an afternoon.
Yes. So, but it really is edge of your seat stuff. But it's quite interesting at the end of it. You know, when he comes around to his theories and everything. That's quite interesting. It gives you food for thought. And well, that's basically, as I said, that's it for tonight. Thank you for being there. And as Vectra Man said, have a great week. It's good night from me.
And it's good night from her.
And it's good night from the Korean lobster monster that just ate that diver.
What you like? I don't know. So, but as I say, have a good week, and we'll see you next week. Till next time, good night and God bless.
Night, guys.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?